experience with the number of that's needed, they'll say,
You busy?
no, no,
I figured it's parallel. This is easy.
Oh, yeah, sure.
These kids like 11,600. Oh, no. It's 100 different. Yeah, I'm not a big producer.
So they've been through a million employees before I came on.
And where were you right now?
I was at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, it's a big trip this summer. Well, that, I mean, the best camera is the one you have available. This one's the one that these are. They're very good.
Yeah, I used to always run around.
Well, can we see somebody on right now? How do we do that? We should be able to copy the screen share. It's been way too long. Pretty cool, everything's free and open.
Alex probably wants to know.
Right, especially with kids. You gotta have something that's like, gotta be easy.
I think there's a lot of plus with the lives of life streams.
Why you now and what your goals are, aspirations are.
When it's your website.
I do, and I think next year.
Actually go out there.
Thank you.
And then I'll introduce you.
Like, or do you not like
My
that?
mom is an expert.
It's sort of like, you know, the families.
Okay, T-minus 1 minute.
Okay,
Go back.
yep, let's see. There we go.
Good.
There we go. Have we gotten the go-ahead? Thank you for coming. Bill said he had.
Now it's gonna be something.
Brian, who's the fellow back there with Pat?
She might want out. So, let's be careful.
Are we ready?
Softball, I think might work. I played baseball, so I got good. My brother was good.
Yeah, let me.
Like one thing I was good at was I could tell if it was strike or ball. So, well, no, I just would get on base.
Oh, I see. Oh, so when
I was not afraid.
Guys, I think we'll start.
Like, we're gonna strike the base. So I got on baseball. But I had no power.
Throw a strike at 2 times.
My one never did it. And I
Do anything special to get to a PowerPoint on there and ready?
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and start. My name's Jim Risco. Sorry, I get choked up. But years ago, my Aunt Pee Wee gave me a very generous gift, and basically with the intention to give it to whatever college or med school that I wanted to. And so I endowed this fellowship to commemorate our 100-year-old dean, Dr. Richardson K. Noback, who sends his best, and Jerry Burton, who was one of our first graduates, probably the first graduate. Anyway, I wanted to start this lectureship in their honor, basically as a gift to the graduating seniors of the medical school, to show them that there's something besides medicine to maintain through their lives. And our first lecture was given by Patrick Taylor, who was a IVF researcher and then became a comedic novelist with an Irish country doctor series, and he was a delight. We've had some great lectures over the years. I wish we had more attendance in person, particularly among the students, but we'll take what we get. Anyway, there's a little bit of serendipity here that I was down at an ATLS course in Springfield, and I saw another doctor about my age with a suitcase, and I thought he might be a traveling physician, and we struck up a conversation. Well, it turned out to be Brad, which turned out to be our lectureship this year. We seem to have known a lot of the same people, and we're looking forward to his presentation. I am grateful that we continue to do this, and the school is working hard to try to improve our attendance and our penetration. I'm hoping to get other medical schools involved online, because I think it's a really unique series. I want graduating seniors to know that they need to have an interest or a hobby outside of medicine to maintain them, both in those lonely days when you're in the call room at night and also after you retire. But anyway, I will turn this over to Dr. Carter to let him introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Risco, and I'm happy and honored to be able to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Brad Warner. Dr. Warner is a pediatric surgeon from St. Louis, but he is first and foremost a UMKC alum and a previous recipient of the Take Wing Award, and a well-funded researcher, currently an R01 that extends through 25 and involves looking at bowel resection and liver injury. So staying active in the field with clinical relevance, and he's widely published and respected. But today, as Dr. Risco introduced, we're going to take a turn, look through a different lens, if I might say that. And Dr. Warner is going to bless us with his presence and artistic skills in photography. With that, Dr. Warner, welcome.
This is really amazing because this is the very room that I took pathology and anatomy in, and I graduated 42 years ago. So a lot's happened in that period of time, but I always keep UMKC in my heart. It made me who I am, and it made me the physician that I am, and so I have a lot of gratitude to be in here. I also had the privilege of knowing Dr. Noback, and what a wonderful guy. He was the dean when I was here, and I don't know if he's still got the eyebrows, but and his trademark, but what a wonderful guy. So this is very different for me because I have given a lot of scientific talks or clinical talks and things, and I was thinking I was going to have to integrate some photography into that kind of a talk, but no, I was told it has to be all about your hobby, so here's my journey. So how it all began, everybody's kind of asked me that. I started really in 6th grade, and I had a Instamatic camera with one of those flash cubes, and I was completely fascinated that you would take this cartridge to a store and come back a week later and pick up pictures that you've taken. That was just so exciting for me, and that sort of charged me a little bit. And then in 7th grade, I went to Brittany Junior High School in St. Louis, and they had a photography club, and they actually had a darkroom in junior high. And so I got to walk into a darkroom and watch these pictures emerge that we had taken, and that sort of turned it on for me. And in 7th grade, I sort of begged my family for Christmas a digital, or not a digital, they didn't even have it then, but my first single-lens reflex camera for, taking my own pictures. And then a year later, my dad was really great, and we had some family friends that had a dark room, and my dad said, well, okay, we can get a dark room. And so we set that up, and when I was, in junior high school, I had a dark room doing black and white photographs. And then, sort of throughout high school and part actually at UMKC as a medical student, I did photography for the school newspaper, yearbook, and I used the darkroom in the medical school here. I don't know if anybody needs to know that, but I got to know the AV guys pretty well, and we talked a lot about photography, and he'd let me come up on Saturdays and do some printing there as long as I brought my own paper. And then along came general surgery residency, 2 years of research, 2 years of pediatric surgery fellowship. I went into sort of 9 years of photographic limbo. I would take pictures when I could, never really had time. I trained when it was a 120-hour work week, every other night call, and you get home at 10 or 11 on your night off, and basically if you could get a beer in you before you fell asleep, that was a great night. But so I've kind of always maintained that, but then on my 40th birthday, this was a game changer for me. My wife gave me a photographic workshop to attend. And what that is, and I would encourage anybody who's interested in photography to do these. They're companies that you meet up with a guide, and anywhere between 5 and 10 other people, they will take you to various places and sort of get you set up to stand on the rock that you want to look over this way, and sunrise is coming up this way, and this is what you're going to look for. And gosh, you learn so much. And I went on this. I'd never done any sort of formal teaching or training in photography at all. And I'll never forget sitting over a cliff edge, and it's black at night. It's like 4 in the morning, and we're just sitting there waiting for something. And I'm like, what the heck are we doing here? This is ridiculous. And the guy said, at this time, the light is going to come over this peak, and that's when you've got to be ready. And I'm just standing there. I couldn't imagine what he's talking about. And all of a sudden, boom, it was like a spotlight on a tree in the middle of this crevice. And it blew me away. And I was so blown away, I couldn't even get my camera set, and it was gone. And so I've learned that light is really important, and it's the type of light that makes the picture. And you've got to be prepared for that light and those changes. And I learned about composition walking around in a field, and this instructor, who had worked with Ansel Adams actually, said, Brad, you just walked right past an iconic shot. And I just turned around and said, oh my God. So that was the first formal teaching, and that lit a real fire for me. And that was a game changer for me. And the other thing that I've learned now too is this is a picture that I took back then, 24 years ago and 25 years ago. And I look at this picture and I thought it was one of the best pictures I'd ever taken back then. I look at it now and I think it's one of the worst. Composition is terrible. There's too much stuff in the foreground. You know, there's not enough separation of the rocks, and there's too much brightness versus darkness. And, you know, and I've got all these pictures hanging in my house that I thought were some of my best prints that just a year later I'm saying, why would I even hang something like that? That's how cool it is, because you get better and better and better, and it's iterative. And so I love not just taking the pictures, but I also love, I don't want to say manipulating them, but post-processing them. There's so many things that you can do with digital imaging now that what would take you an hour or two to do in a dark room now is a simple keystroke and it's done. You don't like it that way, put it back. And you're not pouring chemicals and doing all the other stuff. So it really is, it's really advanced so quickly, and it's great to keep up with. But I just did a little chat GPT, and I just asked it, I said, why do I love photography? That was the question. And it came back with about 8 or 9 bullet points. And it was a great outline for this talk. Honestly, I have to admit, creativity and self-expression. And that's kind of what I feel like when I get out in the field. You can see something that the light doesn't look that great, but what you're feeling when you're seeing that for the first time. And then you take that image, which is relatively flat, and you try to express something with that. And with this, I thought it was a perfect black and white image rather than keeping a color. Color would have looked good too. And then also, I thought the whole gravity of this whole thing to make it a panogram, so where you're taking multiple pictures and stitching them together to make it wider. Another image here, and this was really inspired by Ansel Adams, also at Yosemite, but Ansel Adams has this famous picture. It's the storm over Yosemite, and this is tunnel view, and this is from where he shot it. And my God, they had a big storm there when we came. It's about ready to rain. And this is, yeah, this is mine. Yeah. And so I just love that. I came away from that really satisfied. So I take a lot of pictures around St. Louis locally. You don't have to go far to get some neat images. I think I've probably sold about 100 of these. And being in an academic environment, we've got this picture hanging in the dean's office. We've got this picture hanging in plastic surgery. It's become a gift for almost every graduating fellow in plastics and neonatology. My wife's a neonatologist, so they're fellows. They all pick pictures of St. Louis. But I just went out one day, and this is a 1-minute exposure. And you can see the clouds coming right at you. And when you've exposed for that long a period of time, the ripples in the Mississippi River become like glass. And so you get a nice reflection, and that's the effect. So there's other ways to shoot the arch, and I go down there frequently. My daughter's driving crazy that how many arch pictures I've got. But every time you go there, it's something different. And earlier you saw a picture that was taken, you know, in the fall or something. This was in the winter, and I was just walking around the grounds there in the winter, and I just came across this, the leg of the arch coming out of the trunk of the tree, and I really like that composition. this was just another happenstance, walking around in downtown St. Louis in Laclede's Landing, and it had been a rain there, and I was walking with a friend of mine. We were walking around just seeing what we could take pictures of, and saw this reflection of the arch, and this turned into a site where one of my good friends, a surgical resident who got married, they had their wedding pictures taken here and they brought out water and poured, so they had a reflection that they could use too, and that was a good point for their wedding. And then there are other shots of the arch that, you know, you can just stand there, and again, and this is probably a 35, 40-second exposure, and it's at sunset, so it gets the colors. It's not landscape per se, it's more architectural, if you will, but it's abstract, and I really enjoy this picture. Forest Park is another place, and Forest Park is kind of the jewel of this city in St. Louis. It's actually the largest urban park in the United States. It's bigger than Central Park in New York, and fortunately, this park is right between me, where I live, and where I work at Wash U, and so I can drive either around or through the park on my way to work. And so oftentimes, you know, I've been distracted and pull off and take a picture of something that you see. And this was a first snowfall, and so just happened to capture that. But I really like the color in this against everything else would be monochrome. And this is Forest Park at the Grand Basin as well. And you know, it helps to be with other people when you're shooting. I do enjoy being by myself. You know, I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and I went picture taking on a beach. Was there visiting my daughter with my wife and everything. And I just went out for 5 hours, and I'm just by myself on this beach wandering around. And I was in such a zone, and it was very rewarding, and I was really happy with what I came back with. But we were out here in Forest Park with my son-in-law and my daughter, and walking around the park, and you know, I'm just focused on other things, and my son-in-law tapped me on the shoulder. He says, "Aren't you seeing behind you?" And I turned around, and there was this glorious sunset. So you have to be very conscious of what's going on around you and sensitive to that. And this actually was a stop on the way to work in the morning. A big fog this year engulfed Forest Park. And this is the Muni Opera, the pagoda right in the front of the Muni Opera. And I actually missed a meeting that morning because it was so amazing. I just got so into it. And I would never compromise patient care. I still do surgery like crazy in my clinics. I'm never late for that. But sometimes there are some meetings that might not be as important that if you just happen to have forgot. Sometimes that happens, not often, but it really does. I think as part of what I'm doing, it integrates into my life of being sensitive to the environment, both the beauty of it, but what it makes you feel when it's there, whether it's a good feeling or a bad feeling or something. I think that's something that you can capture and carry with you. This isn't far from here. This is midway between St. Louis and Kansas City, and we used to cover at Mizzou, pediatric surgery coverage there for a period of time. So I'd spend a weekend out there, and you know, there wasn't much going on in trauma, so I was driving around and I heard about this bur oak tree, which is out in the middle of a field, and it very much, I think, shows you a little bit of my style too. So I'll just go back. This is an unusual style for me. This is muted, it's subtle, it's soft, and it's kind of cool. But I am more of a contrast kind of guy. Bright colors in your face and very sharp and crisp, and glossy paper versus matte paper, which is kind of muted. So I'm kind of playing around with trying to change and, you know, get back to a little more muted and less in your face type things. I do like this, and I really think that's a beautiful tree, and it's a beautiful field, and I've got a million pictures of it because we've been going to the zoo for a year or two. But you have to be prepared, and this is on one of my trips to Springfield that I go down there once a month and do surgery in a clinic and then come back, and it's nice to provide coverage there for pediatric surgery. I just noticed these farm ponds on the way down there, and I thought, you know, I'm gonna just bring my camera. And one of the nice things is that I have a driver that drives us there and then drives us back. So I can watch Netflix, I mean, do work in the back seat while I'm going there. And, but he was just great. I've gotten to know him really well because we've done this for several years. And he helped hoist me over a barbed wire fence to get this image. And I made a print for him and gave it to him for Christmas. But, you know, just something that you see and you want to come back to. And it really, these things that have stories with them, I think are important. This is just serendipity as well. This is that same morning at Forest Park when I showed you the, in front of the Muni Opera. This is just one of the streams, many streams in Forest Park. And just as I was standing there, these birds flew over. And to me, that makes the image, you know, it really does. Otherwise, it's okay, but it really adds to it. So just being sensitive to that, I think, is really important. I went to another workshop in the Southwest, and before the workshop started, you know, I just was driving around on the highway, and I just noticed flowers along the highway. So I just pulled off, you know, and I was there for 3 hours. Just, I saw this in a black and white sort of thing, and I wanted it to be sort of moody. And one of the neat things you can do with Lightroom or Photoshop is you can hit a button and take a color picture and make it black and white. And then there are things that you can do to enhance the specific tones of the black and white. And then you can color back the colors of the flowers just from the original image. So that's really all that was. But I think it makes them pop, and it sort of makes me feel good about seeing some beauty and life on the floor of a desert where nothing should live. And I take my camera on vacation with us for our family. You know, I like to sleep in. As a surgeon, you wouldn't want to know that, but I do like to sleep in. And we had been going to Hilton Head for many years with our family. But I would get into the habit of at least, if we're going to be there a week, at least 3-4 days, I'll get up early and see what comes up in the sunset. And I've got so many shots like this. This is just one. But it's just like, wow. I mean, to me, to you maybe no, but this is just, to me, that's so satisfying, is to witness something so beautiful, and you're just kind of there, and you think about nature, and you think about the human body, and you think about what we do and all the miracles of life all around you. And so that's kind of the button that it pushes in me. This was just last week when I went to Edisto Beach, which is maybe about an hour from Charleston. And there were storm clouds going on, and there was about an hour that we had where there was no rain, and saw this reflection. And this beach has all these dead trees, and so I've got a million pictures of dead trees now. So never thought I would be into that, but to me, and it's a great monochrome image, I think. So the other thing about it, aside from the creativity side and pushing that button, I think, is exploration and discovery, and going to places or things that you never realized existed. This is Cato Lake in East Texas, right near the Louisiana border. And it's well known. It's become a photography hotspot now, just like Monument Valley. But it's a lake that has all these cypress trees in it, and it's a swamp, essentially. There's gators in there and everything else. And what you do is you get up, and I did this with a workshop, get up at like 4 in the morning, and you get on these boats, and it's pitch black. And they've got these flashlights, and they're trolling around amongst all this with, you know, the frogs and everything going on. And you sit and wait for the sun to start coming in. And when it does, that fog is settled on the lake, and it gives such an unbelievable sort of artistic sort of view. And, you know, who'd have thought, you know, East Texas? I didn't even know they had water there. You know, I mean, it's just amazing, some of the things that are around us in the States and abroad. Well, one of the places that I've really fallen in love with, of a lot of places to take landscape photography, is Iceland. And we went here probably 15 years ago with my wife, and we went to Paul Cuddy. How are you, man? Good to see you.
Was this the Blue Ice Beach?
No. This is a glacier that's there in front of these mountains, and maybe they call it the Blue Ice Beach. I don't know, but But my wife and I went there, and this is where my wife really realized that her accompanying me on photography is not her gig. Because I can stand there for an hour or two. And we went to Colorado one time, and she did 3 laps around a lake while I was zoned in. And I made her mad because she says, honey, come on, we got to get going. I said, why don't you go pick up a log and lift it or something, you know, while I'm. So you got to be a little sensitive to that for sure. And somehow you can integrate that into things. But I was just back to Greenland and Iceland in September this year. And this actually was taken with a drone, and I'll talk about that in a little bit too. But this is Manifold, and it's this, I don't know, hundreds of millions of year old peak that's moss colored amidst all of the volcanic black rock there. And it just happened to be a wonderful storm and very, very dramatic. And, you know, we sat there and just in awe for hours with this group. And it was really, really phenomenal experience. The other thing I really like taking pictures of is waterfalls. And boy, the Pacific Northwest and pretty much in North Carolina, particularly Iceland, is the bomb for waterfalls. And so if you enjoy any of that, this is the place to be. This is a 300-foot waterfall that you can walk behind and take pictures there. It's just incredible. Another waterfall. Just, I mean, this was like every day. It was like something different. And then having this nice rainbow there just really caught me. And, you know, you think it's serendipity. It is, really. It really is. So I just feel blessed to be able to experience these beautiful places and to keep them as a memory for me. Other waterfalls, and I like how this is sort of like strings rather than, you know, like a flow that's sort of all together. This is much more contrasty, but I love the black rock and the moss, and I like that composition a lot. And this is a pretty iconic shot in Godafoss is one of the big waterfalls down there, and you trek down to the edge of the waterfall, and I must say I was taking pictures of everything for about an hour, and one of the guys that I was shooting with said, Brad, you know, the foreground is really important. You're just taking the background. Get that rock in the foreground. And that's the image. That's the classic image. So, and I've seen this on other websites and things exactly where I was standing. It doesn't matter that I've taken the same picture that everybody else had. It's my picture, you know? And to me, that's special. I mean, you could probably find 100,000 images the same one, but it'll never, ever be identical. So it is your own unique thing, I think, and that's what's really important. And this was really cool in Iceland too, is this mountains and this is not fog, these are geothermal vents, and this is steam that's coming through the ground. And you can see up here, there's our guide, he's walked up there to give you a perspective. And it was just, it's one of those moments where we got to the top of this thing and I turned around to look at this and I said, oh my God, to myself. I just couldn't believe it. It really hit me. And so 3 hours later, it's dark and I'm still, you know, they're like, Brad, we got to go. But that's what really turns me on. This was just by happenstance that this truck came across the road, and I thought, man, he's really messing it up for me. I wish it'd be just a plain road and things there, but I think the truck really makes the picture, in all honesty. So just have to be prepared and take advantage of situations. Oops. And then finally, just last time, and I'd never seen the Northern Lights before, and this is in Iceland, and boy, if you think that there's not something else besides us on Earth, just look at this. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It really lit up, and I'd never experienced anything like that, and it's just nature. It's just amazing. So then the adventure side of what the photography can introduce and bring to you, and I had a great opportunity to go to not only Iceland, but to Greenland. And so Greenland is basically all ice, and Iceland is very green. So I know there's a story behind that, but we got to get on these red sailboats and sail around icebergs and until sunset. And there were 2 red sailboats, so that allowed us to take pictures of each other. And so I'm on one boat taking a picture of them, and they're on their boat taking a picture of us around different things. And that was really an amazing experience. And we saw calving whales and all kinds of wildlife. We pulled off and sat and ate in some little saloon in a town of about 800 people. And right on the edge, we're sitting there, someone comes up in a motorboat, just a little boat, and they pull out 2 seals that they've shot. And they started gutting the seals right there. And that's what they eat. You know, it's an incredible, different environment, you know, just to experience that. It was really something. But when it got to be around sunset too, the colors really came out, and it really opened up an opportunity for this like isolation in the middle of nowhere, this monster-sized floating iceberg. It's just incredible. There were some still days as well, which gave us for good reflections. And I think, again, you know, you can have a whole portfolio of color pictures of glaciers because the ice is blue and it's just beautiful. But I think in a monochrome situation where you really bring out the highlights and you incorporate the shadows and it's just, it really does a lot. It allows you to play a lot with that. The other great place that I've been going to a fair bit is in Banff in Alberta, Canada. There are so many beautiful lakes there, and this is just one of them. And they're all just nestled in the mountains, and you can drive on the iceway. It's a long highway, and I drove there one time while it was in winter, and it was partially snowing, but every corner was like a postcard. It was just unbelievable. So this is Moraine Lake. One morning, just sitting waiting, not knowing what was going to be in front of you because you couldn't see well. But then when the sun started coming up and hitting the top of the peak and was very orange, and this was a long exposure as well because it made the lake glassy, and then the moving clouds coming at us was really very gratifying. And I remember the person that I was shooting with and the conversations that we had before sunrise. It's just really very special. This is a cool lake. It's Abraham Lake in Banff, and these are methane bubbles that are formed by the, I guess, the algae and things, the plant life below, and they make their own bubbles. And so there's 1 million photographers here every year laying on their belly taking pictures of these bubbles. And but it's just really unique, and it's just not anything that I ever grew up in Missouri or the Midwest seeing, you know. And then this is Bow Lake, and again, you know, the best time to shoot are the very times when I want to be sleeping. So the best time's early morning, and golden hour is the hour before actual sunset. And it really is golden. It's a different hue, and it makes it soft, and it really makes it a big difference from just standard noontime. Unfortunately, I find myself going out at noon because that's when I'm, you know, revved up. I've had breakfast, I've read the paper, and I'm going out and shooting, and everything's flat. That's what I get, you know. The other place that I've been to a couple of times now is Death Valley, and that is really a remarkable, diverse place. Yeah, there's sand dunes. It's a desert, if you will. It's the lowest part of the continental United States. It's 200 feet below sea level. It's the hottest place in the United States, and it's the driest. But they do have seasons, and it's really remarkable. So this was a few years ago. I did a workshop there, and this was obviously in color, and I love the undulating sort of feel of the sand and the textures in the sand. But it also makes for great monochrome. And again, you know, in photography, it's about foreground and taking the person who's viewing the image and following that eye and pulling them into the upper part of this image, which I really like. And then this was just from last month. I went just for a week and went with two buddies of mine, actually. One's a pediatric otolaryngologist, and the other is one of our pediatric ICU docs. And there's a lot of people in medicine that are in photography. And so we always work together. We've always talked cameras together. Last year, we went to the Badlands in South Dakota, spent a week. It was a great guys' time together. I mean, we ate steak every night and, you know, got out and took pictures and had a great time. And then we went to a printing workshop in Death Valley just really last month. So this was another shot. And so you learn to focus stack. So if, like with a regular camera, if you focused here, this would be in focus. But as you go further and further away, everything goes out of focus. So you can do what's called a hyperfocal distance and focus in the middle, and hopefully some of the front will be in focus and some behind will be in focus. But what you can do with these cameras now, it's just amazing, it's called focus stacking. So your first focal point is here, and you hit a button and you set it on your camera, focus stack, and it's like, and it takes a picture every 3 or 4 feet. And then electronically, there's a software, you just import it, and it blends it all together perfectly. So everything's in focus from the start to the back. So a lot of interesting technology. And then this was just a nice sunrise, standing out there in a storm thinking, well, this is going to be a bust. And of course, it was just awesome. And then this was, we were driving back, and I was really tired, and we had shot all day, and my knee was hurting and everything, and we're coming around the bend, and the guy that I was with, one of the pediatric ICU guys, he goes, we got to stop again. I'm like, are you kidding? He goes, look at that. So I said, oh, geez. So I did, and by the time I had my camera set up, this was coming out. And just, I don't know why. And he teased me the whole week about being such a dork, you know, that I wouldn't want to take something like that. And that's what I came there to take. And then this would probably be a better in color, but I like the monochrome of the flowers in the field there, and the layers, and then the clouds. And these are clouds that are raining, but the rain isn't hitting the ground. And that's Vergen? Yeah, that's what it's called. So that was really something that I hadn't experienced that before. And there's a waterfall in Death Valley. This is called Darwin Falls. And because of the storms and everything there now, it's very hard to get back to this area, but I was fortunate to be able to get back there and hike back to that. So it's just amazing that you would have this kind of environment all in one place. It's just incredible. And then this is sort of a small little rock pile sitting on the face of these huge rocks, hundreds of millions of year-old rocks. It's just incredible, and how they get this isolation, but this collection of rocks is what really caught my attention. Personal growth in photography, it's made me more mature, I think, made me sensitive to my environment. It helps when I talk to people, you know, I think it helps in my people skills and communication. I'm learning so much about different things, and I told you I had a drone picture earlier. Here's a drone shot. This is a train moving, going through close by St. Louis, and I'm probably 200 feet in the air shooting down. And I just love that. So I've really gotten into drones. It gives you a very different perspective in terms of what you can do. This is a geyser that is in, where was this? In Iceland that we went to. And that's looking straight down, and every 20 or so minutes, this little eye here will blister up boiling water. And it's just a beautiful abstract. And this is a drone shot from when I was in Greenland, and I'm on that boat flying the drone. And you can see we always say that there's much more below the surface of the water in an iceberg than what's above, and I think this illustrates that well. And what I really like is the change in tone, the deeper the ice gets relative to the surrounding water. And one thing you would never know from the side view is there's a pool there, and there's a hole in the ice right there, and that's what's filling that and making that pool within the iceberg. So looks like George O'Keefe went to Iceland. Yeah. No, I just love this shot. It was really fun. And the other things that I've been getting into is a little astrophotography, and so it's a completely different sort of technique, and you have to be prepared to spend a long time at night. This was a shot that we went out for sunset and then stayed out all night until the following morning, and then took sunrise pictures, and then got back and took a nap in the midday. But the Milky Way is very, very dramatic, especially if you can get it within the context of surrounding rocks and whatever your foreground is and things like that. So that's very, very important. Another astrophotography technique is star trails. And what you do here is you take 30-second exposures and you capture the stars moving. And they always circle completely around the North Star. So you point to the North Star and put that wherever you want that to be in your image, and there'll be circles going around that. And so you take these 30-second shots over and over and over and over again for an hour. And then you blend them all together, and it makes these rings. So I just was amazed at this. And to light this up, we did what's called light painting. So we had it was a big flashlight, if you will. And before we did it, we set the photograph for the rock. And so a long exposure and then light painted so that the rock was now this tone. And then you blend that picture with the star trails. And that's how you get that. Of course, we all know about this, most recent. This wasn't the most recent one. This was the one in 2017. And this was from South Carolina. And the day after my daughter got married. So, you know, of course I had my camera, and the epicenter of this was not very far away. So we could get that the day after the wedding, and I was very pleased with that. But that's also a completely different sort of thing. You don't look at this with your eyes. And you have a very special filter for your camera because you can fry your sensor right away unless it's done properly. The other thing I've started to get into is some wildlife stuff. I'm mostly landscape. They say that as you get older, you become a bird photographer. And you do see a lot of older folks sitting on a lawn chair with a big long lens and waiting for birds to fly over. And that's cool. I mean, I enjoy that too. But I've really started getting into it. And so I have a 300 millimeter, it's a 600 millimeter prime lens, and it's literally like that long. It's a Canon. It's kind of embarrassing to carry around, but it's very sharp and can really see some neat things with that. So obviously an eagle here. I went to Bosque del Apache in New Mexico, and they're at this, it's a bird sort of sanctuary where these sandhill cranes and snow geese fly in and migrate through, and they're there for a month or two at a time. But there are millions of them. And when they fly over you, it's like a 747 going over your head. And you don't look up because there's sometimes stuff that comes down from the birds too that not so fun. But the thing about any kind of wildlife photography, and I learned this in a little class in a camera club, is you really want to get the eye of the animal in focus. That's what you go for. If everything else is out of focus, but the eye is in focus, that's a big deal. That's the golden point right there. And so cameras now are made with AI eye detection. And so you just push the shutter halfway down to focus, and it'll recognize the animal and go to the eye. And as long as you hold that down, it's moving with the animal, and that eye will be in focus. And so then you can push with another button and take up to 30 frames a second to capture the flight, and a very fast shutter speed to do that. So birds in flight is a complete different camera setup, different sort of tactics and everything. So I'm constantly learning that. Love these ibis flying over. This was in Florida on another family vacation. So you can squeeze it in when you can. I mean, you can always find ways to do things that you want to do. This is just another in the same sort of Florida area. This is in Bosque del Apache. And it's not just flying birds. You want to get them acting, doing something that's kind of different. This was in my backyard. A Cooper's hawk just sitting there. And this sucker came down and took out a bird in my backyard. There was a bird, and he was sitting there, and I took his picture. And I got back into the kitchen, and I saw him drop down into the bushes in front of our backyard area, and this bird flew out, and the bird flew right into our window, and it died immediately. And I went outside to look for the bird, and the hawk and the bird were gone. Incredible. Just in your backyard. It's just unbelievable.
It was St. Louis, though.
Yeah, it was St. Louis. That's right. So I went to San Diego. I like going to the shore. I love the beach, and these sea lions are sort of snuggling. To me, it looks like an oyster shell they're laying in, and they just how they lay together and everything is just so amazing to me. They just kind of fold into the environment. This was from when I went to Badlands and longhorn sheep and all of this. So, and this was actually, there's a wolf preserve right outside of St. Louis as well, and you can go take pictures of wolves. They're behind gates and fences, so it's not like really wild, you know, but I made the background really dark and made them pop, and so it looks like they're in the wild, but they're really not. The other things that I use my photography in a lot is in the operating room, and I've published a lot of pictures where I've got images, intraoperative pictures that were taken. We used to buy cameras for our pediatric surgical fellows so that they could take pictures in the operating room and keep those. They're incredibly instructive for PATH conference, and when RADS conference, we have a PATH or a surgery radiology conference every week, and they love seeing what they're calling on, and I'm sure you can appreciate that, Alex, you know, how they really like that. This was a inflammatory myofibroblastic tumor that we resected from this girl. And importantly here, you can see the mass and where it's coming from of the ileum, but you can also see these tumor-like deposits, and they were throughout the peritoneal cavity, and that's very important in terms of her treatment regimen and how that's illustrated, and the oncologists were just aghast at this. But very, very important, I think, to do this in the operating room and use it as a tool. The other thing that I've done in the WashU thing now is the goddamn surgical residents are making me take their graduation pictures. So, you know, you get them all out there and you take them onto the top of the helipad, and so they get those, and I gave them all individual portraits in the operating room, and so that's like 5-6 years now into it, and I'm just like, every time they're calling me, and but it's fun, you know. I love the residents, and I have a great relationship with them, and they really appreciate it, and if that's something that I can do that makes them happy, that's great. And then there's total abstract stuff. Like this was a tree that I took somewhere in Missouri, and I blended that, inverted it, and made it blurry so it looks like a reflection, and it's not. And then that's a sky that I put a motion blur onto and just pasted all that together. And, you know, it's kind of a neat abstract kind of thing. Someone would believe that exists somewhere, and we got to be a little careful because there are AI coming out now that can make pictures of anything, anybody doing anything, you know, hanging by their fingernail on a ledge, you know, looking 30,000 feet below and everything. It's just crazy. So you have to watch for that. But, you know, I sort of look at photography as your interpretation of what you see, and it's an art form. It's not journalism. Your goal is not to photograph what's there and present it the way that it is. As an art form, your goal is to take that image and express something with it. And my wife is killing me all the time. I show her this image, and she saw with me when I was there. And the first words she always says is, "It didn't look like that." I said, "You're right. I hope it didn't, because that would be journalism as far as I'm concerned." So that's where it sort of gets into, and this is what I like to spend a lot of time doing, is post-processing. These are the same image. The left is raw, comes right out of the camera. It's got all the information there, but it's flat. And what your goal is to bring out what information is in that. And you can bring out the colors, you could saturate the colors, you can lighten certain areas, darken certain areas, many things that you can do. And believe it or not, this was done by Ansel Adams in the darkroom years ago, before digital imaging. He was dodging and burning and touching up these things and increasing contrast here, and a lot of work was done in the darkroom. But what would take him a day or two can do in like 20 minutes here. But I do spend hours with a print every now and then, because there are things that I don't like. I do remove some things that are distracting. Like if there's a foreground branch that's sticking right up into the thing, I'll remove that. That's pretty easy to do. But there are people that are putting in animals, or people that are moving things completely. And if, you know, it's art. If that's what they're doing, more power to them.
Industry of hand retouching.
Yeah.
Color.
Yeah.
With pencils and.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Back in the 20s and 30s.
Well, all the fashion photography and things like that, that's so airbrushed it used to be, and now it's all digitized. You can make legs longer, you can make people way thinner. I like pictures of myself that I can manipulate. So for some reason, all my clothes seem to be shrinking as I get older. I don't understand that. But the other really neat thing about photography as a hobby is a connection with others. And, you know, it's really cool. I love these groups that you go out with. They're people from all walks of life. There's a really large percentage of medicine people that are out there, really. There's usually always a radiologist. There's usually always another surgeon. And I've connected with people, and we're Facebook friends, and we've shot a couple of times together at the same sort of thing. This was the print workshop that we did in Death Valley, just recent, and we just sat in a room and taught us how to go through setting up your printer and calibrating and all of this, and then we went out and shot. This was at Cato Lake, where we had the cypress, and this was in Monument Valley. What an experience that was. We got up to this plateau, and we're driven up there by these Indians that know how to drive these four-wheel drive, and you're literally going up that high, and you get up to this plateau, set up tents, campfire, steak dinner, and you're sleeping in a little tent by yourself, and you wake up to this Monument Valley view of sunrise. It's just breathtaking. It's just amazing. This is Matt Goldsmith, and he's a pediatric critical care attending, and Dave Moulter is a pediatric otolaryngologist, and the three of us have been going out a couple of times, and then this is our most recent Iceland workshop. But really great people, and I keep up with them, and you form a lot of friends, and so it gets you a little bit outside of the medicine thing. It really does. And I think it's important that you exercise both sides of your brain. You know, with medicine and research and all that I'm doing in that, I love it. That's my life. But I think if that's all I did, I think I'd feel relatively flat. If all I did was photography, I don't think I could exist. I really wouldn't want to make my life work out of it because it's so competitive. I just feel blessed that I can do both. And the most important thing, I've got a wife that is amazing, and that's so important, to have a partner that understands you. And she says the reason we've been married for 40 years is because I don't have to spend so much time with you. You know, and she's chief of neonatology at WashU. She's got her gigs. I've got mine. We intersect a lot scientifically. We've co-authored several things together. But we're both pretty independent. And, you know, she has things that she loves to do. I have things that I love to do. We give each other a long tether. And it's great. She appreciates most of my pictures, not all. So with that, I'll just wrap up and say it's been a pleasure to be here and talk with you about my journey in photography. This is from the Grand Canyon, and I'm about ready to fall off that cliff. And but it's just a passion, and it's been something that I've really accelerated as I'm getting closer to retirement, because this will be easier to step into that, and it won't be as pressured that I've got to be back by a certain time or whatever, that I can play with the images whenever I want and do whatever I want, and I'm looking forward to it. If any of you are interested, there's a great website, 500px.com, and that's where a lot of not professional, but amateur and professional photographers post their images. It's like Instagram in a way, but you can basically put your images up, and people will like them, and they get scored, and people make comments, and there's communities that you friend people and all this kind of thing. It's pretty standard, but the quality of the photography there, I've learned so much. And if you're going to go to a place like Yosemite, you just type in search Yosemite, and it'll bring you up all the pictures that people have taken from Yosemite. You're like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was, and where is that? And you can geotag it, and you can go there. And then if you want to look at my images, it's just 500px.com. It's important to /P Brad Warner !view = photos, and that'll take you to the website. So with that, I think I've talked enough. Be happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your attention. And I appreciate you.
This is exactly what this fellowship was set up for. This is exactly what we want to have going forward. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Do you ever find that you would use filters, say polarizing filters, things like that, or do you do it all on the computer later on?
Yeah, that's a great question. have kept a polarizing filter on my camera all the time. I find that I really use it. The only thing is it makes it slower, your shutter speed a little bit, but that's okay. I use a tripod very often, but I use it a lot. I really do. You have to be careful if you've got a real wide lens and you're polarizing, you can cast a shadow that doesn't look really very good. But yeah, I think it intensifies the colors really well. Yeah.
So I think I told you, Dr. Warner, that our senior students are joining us today who are in our leadership course. They're reflecting on a number of different topics in medicine as they enter residency. I have two questions for you. One is, tell us a little bit about your journey through residency and if this artistic side of you was part of you at that point. And then secondly, I'm curious, for the photos that you showed us, you obviously spent a lot of time. How many photos do you think you took to get to the, how many photos were on your slide set here?
This is 60 pictures.
60 pictures. So the first question is, describe yourself as a resident and the artistic side of you there and how your fellow residents would have described you. And then how many photos did you take to get to the 60 you showed us?
Well, I'll answer the last question first. I think a lot of National Geographic photographers say they take about 10,000 images for the one that they like. And I'm probably worse than that. You know, birds in flight, half of my images, the bird's not even in the frame. And I'm trying to find it. And I was in Charleston and these birds flew over my head and I almost fell over and I couldn't get them and I was so frustrated. So that's the way it is. And you can get them, but then they're not doing anything interesting. And so it's a lot, really a lot. So, but in terms of my life as a resident, things were different then. You know, I started my pediatric or my general surgery residency in 1982, and it was every other night. And it was, you know, sort of, they didn't have laparoscopy then. There was no concern for getting patients out sooner. We'd admit them the night before for hernia, and they would stay in bed rest for 4 to 5 days afterward. The bigger the incision, the more macho you were. So big incisions were encouraged, and if you tried to do something through a small incision, you were chastised for it, especially if you had a complication. And it was very, very different. And there was a hostility factor that made it a little hard. You know, you're always, I guess I worked best under fear of failure, and that made me better. Our chairman was a very strong personality. You know, he would have really surgical residents crying at the presentation of M&M, you know, about how stupid were you, what were you thinking, you know, and this kind of thing. And so that really sort of made it, for me, it pushed me to be better. And so I didn't have a lot of time for photography, or really much of anything, quite honestly, because I think of my first weekend day off was in October. I started my residency in July 1st. And so I was driving around and I ran into the back of a car that was sitting at a stop sign. And I was just distracted because I had never driven on the road when it was light out. And, so, yeah, I just didn't really have time for that at all. The things that maybe started to change a little bit was when my wife and I started dating and got engaged. So I had a 2-year window in the middle of my general surgery residency where I was doing research. And that actually was the antigen that I've been vaccinated with forever, and I can't shed that antibody. Although my chairman did ask me one time if I had an antibody to knowledge. I did something I shouldn't have done. And he told me not to do it, and I did it again. And that's what he said, you must have an antibody to knowledge. I said, yes, sir. You know, I get plasmapheresed often. But you know, it was, when I started going out with Barb and we got engaged and we had downtime in the lab, then I could, you know, we would take some vacations together, and of course I'd bring my camera then. And I always took pictures in the operating room, so that was something that I was kind of known for in my training. But it was pretty much then just focused on the academic stuff, and very proud to have pictures published, you know, associated with case reports and things that you'd write up. And I had a few They used to have this thing in the New England Journal called photo fillers. They don't have them anymore. But I had, I think, around 10 or 11 images published over the years, but they shut that down many years ago. So,
I remember I got shanghaied into an art history class in college, and I became very aware of the difference between left-brained people and right-brained people.
Yeah.
The left-brained people went into medical school. Right-brained people were all art majors.
yeah.
They could remember, they could draw the image, they
Yeah.
couldn't tell you the date or the author. It sounds like you're a mixed brain and your wife's left brain.
Yeah. Well, I married up. That's for sure. And you know, I think giving me the freedom, I think, is really important. You know, and not being on me if I'm out for a few hours later than I said I would be, because she knows what I'm doing. You know, and but
At least you're not golfing.
yeah, well, that's just it. You know, I don't golf. I don't do a lot of things that a lot of people do spend a lot of time doing. You know, as two physician parents raising two kids forced me to be a part of my daughter's lives that I would not have been if Barb were not in medicine. I'll never forget coming home and post-call and I'm dead, and Barb handing me the baby and saying, "See you tomorrow." And I'm like, really? I'm many hours playing Pretty Princess with my daughters. I'm embarrassed to say, but I'm happy that I did that. And but you know, it really forced me, but it made me a better parent, I think, overall. And you know, that was the other thing I didn't show, but you know, having daughters and an interest in photography. I've got a million pictures of my daughters, and I wasn't going to show any of those, but they would be embarrassed. But that was something that really was good.
A lot of talk about the importance of well-being in medicine. And in fact, Dr. Algren is going to be talking to our senior students after your lecture about that importance. How important is your artwork to keep your work-life balance?
Yeah, I mean, you always have to keep in the back of your mind that you can get in the moment at work and that's everything. And it is for the people you're caring for. It absolutely is. But you can't immerse yourself 100% in that. There's just no way. You'll suffocate. And you have to have your own sort of something that you've got of your own that is you, that you can exercise and that you can do. And photography is it with me. Exercise is it with other people. Music is it with other people. Whatever. You know, there's just something that you can go to that you know you love. And you can go from any place to get to that point.
I think that focus of being in the moment, regardless of what the outlet might be, is really important, especially in this era where there's so many things competing for our attention and there's such a brevity of focus on a regular basis. This is a blessing and a curse. It's changed the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brad, thank you very much.
Join us over here, we have some coffee and cookies and cheese, so if you wanna over and join us for a little reception, we'd love that.
Yeah.
I'm still cranking a little bit here,
I'm well, how are you?